Hello and welcome to the Monday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who, like me, and probably like you, is still recovering from Friday night. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I am both physically and mentally. Physically, because we were here until about 5 o'clock in the morning, which is why we chose not to re-record that episode, because I think we both would have fallen asleep midway through. And then, emotionally, because I really don't know what to make of this U.S. team or World Cup qualifying or Costa Rica or really anything.
Well, we said this in our US-Mexico review, which, again, if you haven't listened, I encourage you to go back and listen. We said it was kind of a roller coaster, right? Horrible first 20 minutes, crazy tactics. Then, like a good hour or so, or at least a second half of, the US looking really good back in that classic 4-4-2 that everyone's comfortable with. Then Rafa Marquez header, 89th minute, just deflated us. Absolutely deflated us. Lost 2-1 in Columbus.
And I mean, given the way those first 26 minutes went, and I think you were more on the ball with that than I was, because you were like, this is not good. This is not good. You were really like flummoxed. Like you were out of your chair on the couch that we have. Then you were like kind of on the floor squatting at one point watching it.
I was trying to go for different angles to see if...
I was just...
Turns out the TV looks the same from every angle.
That's why you pay for the quality television with no glare. But I was like, you are generally a bit more unemotional when it comes to these things than I am. And so I was so surprised because I was like, no, it's fine. And then kind of slowly, as the seconds ticked away, I was like, no, wait, this is bad. This is bad. And I think I was just sort of like, oh, okay, we're figuring it out. And I'm used to sort of having to figure it out to start the game. Was not used to having to figure it out that much to start the game.
Speaking of figuring it out, so we don't want to rehash our whole review, but just if you missed it, the basic case is that Klinsmann started in a 3-5-2, which he calls a 3-4-3, but it wasn't. It was a 3-5-2.
I think he called a 3-4-1-2. But
did he really?
Yeah, being very semantical there.
It did not work because the players weren't used to it. No one quite knew where the spacing was, who was supposed to mark where. You saw the US chasing around like crazy. 26-minute, Jones and Bradley go over to the bench, gesticulate wildly at Klinsmann, and essentially get him to change back to the 4-4-2. And it works a lot better, right? That's the short scenario. The goal, we looked at the Rafa Marquez goal. We kind of blame John Brooks for not marking. We kind of blame Josie Altidore for not defending that space correctly. And we forgot to mention that he did the same against New Zealand in the most recent friendlies. That's definitely a trend of Josie having a defensive job and twice not doing it, right? Not stepping to the ball. But we also credited Rafa Marquez with scoring the header. Okay, so that's where we are with that. Going forward, we have 0 points. We are going away to Costa Rica on Tuesday night. And how many times have we won in World Cup qualifying away to Costa Rica?
Big old 0. We are we've played 9 at this point in qualifiers. 8 losses, 1 draw, 0 wins.
0 wins. So all the focus is always on Mexico, right? And we need to go to the Azteca and all that. But Costa Rica is kind of, I want to say, our second biggest rival in CONCACAF.
I think so.
In the Hex. And also our second biggest challenge in terms of going there and trying to get points.
And I think they're even trickier, I would say, than Mexico, because Mexico, they're a known entity. They are a very good team. They're always going to be a tough opponent for the United States. And I think, especially coming off of playing Mexico, it can be easy to be like, well, we've got an easier game against Costa Rica. No, you do not.
That is, I think, how maybe your casual fan might be thinking about this. Like, okay, it's away, but it's not Mexico, it's Costa Rica. So we've just watched Costa Rica's 2-0 win away to Trinidad and Tobago, which they scored on Friday. We sort of have a good feel for what Costa Rica do. And there were with Mexico, there are threats that Costa Rica pose. There's a style that they play, and there are also some opportunities for the US. And I think we're going to talk about that on this show. We're going to offer ways we think the US could take that to their advantage and avoid disadvantages if possible. And then we're going to hope that Klinsmann sees the same things. It's a lot of crossing fingers between now and Tuesday night.
There is, and I think for those crossing fingers, hoping that this will be the same Costa Rica that came out against the United States in Copa America Centenario, lost 4-0, they're going to be upset, if that's what their hope is, because Oscar Ramirez has definitely got this team playing much more cohesive soccer. You could see that in that 2-0 win over Trinidad. You could see that he's not afraid to drop people, start different players, because he wants them to execute a specific game plan against a specific opponent. And I think he will have no problem doing that against the United States either.
So should we try and we'll try and set people up for what to expect Tuesday night. I think 9:05 p.m. Eastern is the kickoff on beIN Sports. What can we expect Costa Rica to do, Taylor?
I would expect a back 3 that morphs into a back 5. So it can be misconstrued as a 5-4-1 at times, but I think it's more like a 3-4-2-1 is basically how I would get with it.
We independently, we watched it together, but we independently wrote out our formations and came to essentially the same thing, right? Which is a back 3. a four-man midfield, but the wide guys are basically fullbacks. Then to me, the interesting part is you then have two attacking midfielders. It was Ruiz and Bolaños in the Trinidad game, who are central but also go wide, right? Ruiz on the right, Bolaños on the left, and then one striker, Ureña, replaced by Joel Campbell, who looked much more effective later on.
Yep. And I think a few of the key things we saw in this game were, first of all, Costa Rica failed to really create many opportunities in that first half, both goals coming in the second half. I think part of the reason why those goals came is, as you mentioned, the Joel Campbell substitution, or the Joel substitution, apparently.
Sounds like a movie.
It does.
I'd watch that.
But it's also that they being Costa Rica, were better in terms of the fluidity of their attacks. So for example...
Which is scary after watching the US on Friday night.
Yeah, very much so, because you'd see, for example, that right wing back, Gamboa. He would get forward at times, and then there would be times when he would be far forward on the right wing. Brian Ruiz would look like he was the right-sided fullback, and then you'd have Ureña or Joel Campbell dropping in as almost a central midfielder. You've had Borges step ahead of him, so you had this players kind of moving all over, shifting all over, which continuously drew Trinidad players out of position.
And I want to say they also did a defensively good job as well. How many times did we see Trinidad get forced wide, forced into a ball down the line, and then one of the wing-backs, Gamboa or Matarrita, would step and pick it off.
We saw it so many times in the first 5 minutes that you had to apologize for rewinding. You're like, I promise we're going to watch this game. I have to know what's happening. Because really, in the first 5 minutes, at least 3 times, Trinidad would get the ball, not under very much pressure, pass the ball from the center back to center back, then out to the right back. He'd dribble forward a little bit and pass the ball. And it would be that weird thing where he would pass it into the part of the camera where you couldn't see what was to the left of the camera, and the camera would pan over, and all of a sudden there'd just be a Costa Rican player standing there with the ball. And it's because they did a really good job of forcing them one way, forcing that pass, and then stepping and winning it. Also kind of some bad passing from Trinidad to start that game. But it's still a clear game plan. Yeah, exactly.
And I want to try and break this down because I think this is a key part of Costa Rica's game. Maybe for people who haven't played that much soccer, to break down how, for example, the attacking midfielders force Trinidad and may force the US into those balls down the line. Right? You do it by pressing, right? So you go up and you square up to the guy, but you don't do it aggressively enough to actually make a play for the ball. You just cut off one side, right? Essentially, you cut off the pass to the interior of the field. You only give him, and you sort of gently encourage him to pass the ball outside down the line. Then your wing-back knows what's coming. So if you're Matarrita, you know that Ruiz is pushing the left-back. Say it's Matt Beasler. He's pushing him that side. He's going to force him to play that ball down there. So Matarrita's ready. The trap is primed and ready to be sprung.
So imagine you have the orange juice thing where you press the orange half onto it and you squeeze it and then the orange juice comes out.
An old-school orange juice?
Yeah, if you're making fresh squeezed orange juice. So that would be the Gegenpress, high-intensity Atletico Madrid thing, right? You force that orange on there and you press it a certain way. And I think the Costa Rica one...
I'm really excited to know where this is going.
Costa Rica one is more you put the orange on top of the thing and then you're press yourself if you want to, orange. And you just slowly let it do it to itself and then you apply that pressure and then the juice is suddenly there. So it's less of direct pressure and more Brian Ruiz slowly slides over, Ureña slowly slides over. Now you can't play back across the middle, so you have to go up that line. Then once that ball is played, that's where there is that intense pressure.
The thing that gives me some optimism is I don't think Trinidad did a very smart job of it.
No.
I thought sometimes their wingers could have... It was Jovan Jones was one of the wingers. Could have come and met the ball and instead waited. Didn't know that, say, Matarrita or Gamboa were going to step. I think the US will be better about it.
I think it was... Yeah, so I think, number one, you're right that they could have come and met that pass up the line. Also, routinely, at least in the first... 15 to 20 minutes, Trinidad would slowly move that ball. So it'd be center back pass to the right back, the left back. Right back takes a touch, takes another touch, then kind of takes a touch up the field. And you're allowing Costa Rica to get into their defensive setup. Yeah. If that's, say... I don't know who it could be in this game. Say it's Timmy Chandler, as it was against Mexico.
Right back.
Timmy Chandler, that first touch is up the field and away. Now you've kind of made Brian Ruiz have to work harder to get into that shape.
So we're talking about going a bit more direct? Or a bit faster, at least.
A bit faster is the thing. It's not being quite so ponderous on the ball.
But this is what we wanted against Mexico.
It is.
And we got it kind of in the second half.
And it worked. Yeah, that's where the goal came from. But the other thing I think we spotted as the game progressed, and I think we spotted it because Trinidad spotted it first, is that the other thing that would start to happen is those left wing backs in Matarrita and Gamboa would start to cheat a little bit. And they would start to step up and anticipate that pass. And smarter runners started to anticipate that, would run in behind, ball would come over the top instead of on the floor. Then there's space to run into. Now you have this big gap between the center backs and those wing backs. That's an opportunity that the United States can exploit.
I want to say any back three this is the opportunity. The opportunity is behind the wing backs and down the sides. There is a space to play into. Yeah, Trinidad had a tiny bit of success with it. If the US identify it, I think it's a thing we could really make the most of, especially if we've got, say, Christian Pulisic or Fabian Johnson or one of those really smart players.
Even Bobby Wood, who likes making those kind of pacey diagonal runs into space.
Yes.
He's very good at spotting those, and I think Christian Pulisic and other intelligent midfielders are capable of finding that space as well.
Maybe Sasha Kleshton. We'll get onto maybe our ideal US starting 11, which we actually haven't really discussed off air time, so I'm really interested in where we're going to end up with this. I changed subject to how Costa Rica defend. I think I was just eager to talk defending.
That's fine.
We were earlier talking about their attacking scheme.
We were.
The one thing we didn't talk about is the centre forward, sometimes Urena, sometimes Joel Campbell, lone forward with two attacking midfielders behind him, would come a little deep, turn and show for the ball. That's definitely something they were doing and something they'll do against the US, I think.
But I think it's how you establish kind of consistent possession in the attacking third, or at least in your opponent's half. Is you're not hanging on that last defender, looking to hit it over the top. Right. You're not trying to stretch them so much. So then
it's the very opposite of that, right?
Right, exactly. Because especially with the way Costa Rica play this like 3-4-2-1 situation.
Situation.
Yep.
Is that what Ramirez calls it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because of their setup, it can be easily stretched. So you could have Urena all the way up top by himself. You get a Borges way behind, and all of a sudden there's a 60-yard gap there. But because Borges steps up a little bit, and because Urena is willing to drop those 20 yards, now he can check in. He gets the ball to feet. He can play it out wide, one touch to Ruiz. Then he makes a run. Bolaños comes across, and that's what I'm talking about with that fluidity. It's Urena dropping back and playing quickly allows for there to be quick possession in the opponent's half, as opposed to slowly building out of the back. Because the times that they did try to do that when they would pass between the center backs, there wasn't much on. Eventually they did kind of kick it long.
Trinidad shut them down for like some periods at a time, right? I want to talk about those midfielders as well, because I think these are the guys that really make this team tick, but they're kind of somehow not as famous as they should be. Like number 5, Borges, I thought looks a really, really good player, like a really good central midfielder who, like really simple but effective, will keep things moving. His partner in this 2-man central midfield against Trinidad.
Azofifa? Is that where we're going to go?
Thank you, because my handwriting is terrible. He was wearing number 14. He's kind of more like the defensive midfielder, but he could hit a pass.
Yeah, they're both capable of doing that kind of like 40-yard on the ground, bypass that first like line of pressure, and then get in behind, and then that first line has to collapse. You can push forward. And what continuously would happen, at least in the first half, was there'd be that long-driven ball on the floor. The first line of Trinidad attackers would now have to drop back in and play defense. And generally what that meant was they were converging on the spot where that ball went, which would then allow the wingbacks to press forward. They can now get the ball wide open in the channel.
Ooh. Instead of Azofifa, it could be Yeltsin Tejada, a guy we're pretty familiar with, not least because I went back and read some articles about the 4-0 loss in the Copa. The US beat Costa Rica 4-0. They played that game without Tejada, who is their kind of defensive midfielder. As I understand it, Azofifa was his backup. So it'll be interested to see who starts against the US, but it has to be one of them this time.
You keep calling him Tejada, and I feel like you know better than that.
Yeltsin Tejada.
You call him Yeltsin. We call him Yeltsin. I'm pretty sure he has Yeltsin on his jersey. I could be wrong.
Does it?
He's named after Boris Yeltsin, right? That's the famous story?
Yeah. So just look out for one of those guys. They won't make the same mistake they made at the Copa America Centenario.
This is true.
The other mistake they made at Copa America Centenario was to come out and press the US aggressively. And then we just like bypassed it and played through. So I want to talk about maybe what we think their style will be in this game.
I think that they are probably the team, given the situation in the standings right now. They went away to Trinidad. They got that 2-0 win. The United States lost at home.
It's a big win, right? Yeah.
I think they are the team that is, strangely, even with the historical record, the one that is more okay with setting up for a draw. Because I think they know the United States can't... A draw would be good, given the past record, as we said. 8 losses, 1 draw. Right. But to start qualifying 2 games, 1 point, and Trinidad would then have 2 games, 4 points... It's probably better for them. And so I think there's an awareness that the United States are probably the ones who are going to have to come out and try to get the result, so you can sit back a little bit and then pick your opportunities.
So you think that's what Ramirez will ask them to do, maybe be a little bit patient, tempt the US forward, hit us on the counter?
My guess would be you'll see something roughly similar to what you saw against Trinidad, which was they were willing to go forward quickly and try to create opportunities. They were also more than happy to have like a 27 pass sequence, 26 of which were the 3 center backs passing the ball back and forth, and kind of forcing the United States to come out a little bit, trying to draw them out, seeing what that leads to. It'll be interesting to see if the United States, conversely, do come out with high pressure and try not to let them have pressure, not let them get settled.
We will definitely get to the US in a second. There's one more guy I want to talk about.
Let's have it.
The 2 attacking midfielders who will play behind either Urenia or Joel Campbell. We think Joel Campbell, based on performances in this
we do.
In this Trinidad game, right? Bolaños, we talked about. Bolaños, you'll notice he'll have the headband. You'll be able to spot him. He's got a real thick headband going on there. Keeps his hair back. Conserving a nice ball. Really clever, technically really good player. The other guy, Brian Ruiz. Tricky Brian Ruiz. You may remember him being a Clint Dempsey teammate at Fulham. He is now at, Sporting Club de Lisbon?
Yes.
Yes, a really top-level player. Got a big kick in the calf against Trinidad.
He did.
Came off in the 78th minute. I don't want to wish him ill, but I wouldn't be upset if he didn't start this game.
Yeah, I would not be upset with that at all.
Because he's dangerous, right? He's a very tricky, dangerous. For example, he got injured doing a Zidane roulette.
Yeah, and he got injured at a time when, again, it's only 1-0. You're away. He's doing big things. I don't think it was a preventative, we want to make sure he's there for the U.S. game. It does seem like it probably was. Maybe he was starting to cramp a little bit. Maybe it's a kick. Maybe it's a contusion. Maybe it's a strain.
It was a big kick. I think he's got a calf contusion.
Yeah, so it might just be a little bit preventative, but a little bit, he's got a dead leg. He can't continue. We need somebody in there to get a result. Still, I have a feeling he will probably start against the United States, even with that said.
Okay, so shall we switch to the United States? No, you want to talk more?
I want to say one more thing. I guess this is transitioning into the United States. I do want to say this, though, because I was a little bit nervous knowing that in the last round of qualifying, the United States went to Port of Spain in Trinidad and got a 0-0 draw. So I was a little bit like, oh boy, Costa Rica went there, got a 2-0 win. That's bad. Now, the Ticos deserve that win. Don't get me wrong. Played very, very well. But those 2 goals, I think, were more about Trinidad just deciding not to defend, really, anymore than they were Costa Rica just carving them open. Yes, it's a wide-open goal for the first one. That is a result of some really clever passing.
It's some of that movement you talked about down the right as well, where, Ruiz comes inside and Campbell comes deep and Gamboa overlaps. There is, all that movement on the right side that worries me in terms of the US tracking it.
Yes, but at the same time, it's still, I think, is it Bolaños who ends up scoring? I can't remember who it is. But it's basically he runs 20 yards completely unmarked and is standing wide open inside the 6-yard box when he gets the ball, to the extent that I thought the guy who was supposed to be marking him...
It was number 5. I think it's Bateau.
I think he actively ran away so that his teammates wouldn't think it was his fault. Because he it just made no sense to me. And so
I don't think it was that, but I agree it looked like that, which is bad enough. Right?
So it's still really good passing from Costa Rica, don't get me wrong. But it's also some of the worst defending I've seen in CONCACAF qualifying, and that's saying something. So I think if the United States are a little bit better, then it's going to be a much more even game.
So, okay, this is the interesting thing then. We just talked about how Costa Rica can pull you around, move you around, pull you apart. Right? We don't want that. To me, that says we don't want the United States to play a formation they are unfamiliar with. We talked earlier about essentially the power battle between the Bradley Jones axis and Klinsmann as the coach, and them asking him to give up on this 3-4-3 or whatever you're calling it, Jurgen, and go back to what we know. Can we agree, here sitting at this table, that we don't want to see another unfamiliar formation and shape because it's too dangerous to do against Costa Rica because they will have their movement will be too good and we'll get too confused?
I can say that I do not want to see something experimental. That said, if the United States spend every day since that loss to Mexico really working and really trying to fine-tune the 3-5-2 and everyone shows up and is ready for it, the 3-4-1-2, whatever it is, if they show up and they're really ready for it, fine, go for it. But I don't think they will be.
You don't think they'll be ready?
No, I think...
I would say at least it's not as experimental now, as in we've tried it for 26 minutes of an actual game. I presume they trained with it before Mexico, and if they're going to do it, they will have trained with it again, like you said, leading up to this game.
And this goes back to a conversation we had in that USA-Mexico review, is that I think that there are 3 schools of thought about the United States team at present. One is, I'm sure it'll be fine. One is, this is Klinsmann's fault.
I'd like to meet those people.
Yeah, I think those are the people who are sort of like, they're Lexi Lawless. It's like, there's plenty of games to be played. I'm sure we'll make it far.
Meaning the Hex is like, the Hex, top 3.5 teams qualify. We'll be okay.
Right. And then I think there are people who feel like this team has either stayed the same or regressed under Jurgen Klinsmann, that he is holding them back a little bit.
And the evidence for that is we no longer own Columbus.
Right. And then I think there's a third group of people who think that Klinsmann is doing stuff. He's trying different things. He's made progress in different tournaments. And so then you naturally have to point to individual players or groups of players.
The players are to blame.
And that's where I've seen a lot of people criticizing Michael Bradley for a lack of enthusiasm, for a lack of defensive work, for maybe not being as sharp. I think same thing for Jermaine Jones at times. And I think so then you kind of fall into one of those three schools. I think I'm willing to say I fall into the Klinsmann isn't helping things bandwagon, and thus I don't think I want to see that 3-in-the-back formation against Costa Rica because I don't think that he will have or has done enough to prepare the team to play that system efficiently and effectively.
All right then, Taylor, you know the rule. When you say what you don't want, you have to say what you do want.
I think
you're going to repeal and replace the 3-4-3. What are you going to replace it with?
It's tough to say, and you came back into the room, I think from getting water, refilling the coffee jar, and I was just staring into space. Now I am a little bit sick, and I'm on a bit of Sudafed, so that's part of it. But it was also you're like, "Are you okay?"
It was a Dayquil problem, right?
Yeah. You're like, "Are you okay?" And it really was trying to figure out the best system to deal with that fluidity that we talked about between Bolaños, Ruiz, Azufefa, Borges, Campbell.
Stop it! You're scaring me.
Well, I think the answer is it might be boring. It's 4 in the back. And it's a midfield that can clog it up and not really get caught being sucked out of position. So I think it's either...
It's not 4-4-2 then, right?
It's either a 4-4-2 when everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to do, or if you want to go conservative to start, it's a 4-2-3-1.
Having this conversation now, I lean towards 4-2-3-1 just so we can get those numbers in midfield. So before we talk about anything else, one thing I want to say is because of the way they do those wing backs plus Ruiz and Bolaños going wide, they're going to have numbers out wide, right? And because they're going to force us wide, we cannot go with fewer than 2 players wide on each side. That's the reason not to do 3-4-3, right? The reason to do it is to make sure you have a right back and a right winger, left back and a left winger, so that you've got numbers on the side naturally.
Because remember what we talked about, again, going back to the Mexico game, we talked about how we wanted to be the ones to attack the flanks and get numbers there. That's what Mexico kept doing. They kept overwhelming the U.S.'s right-hand side, Mexico's left-hand side, and getting opportunities. We cannot afford to have that situation when, as what happened against Trinidad, that Trinidad would kind of collapse into the middle to try to shut down passing options. Then you'd have, say, Matarrita sprint down that left-hand side. No one is in front of him. And you cannot have that for this U.S. team. That's why I think you have to have a wide midfielder and a wide fullback so that you have 2 people out there dedicated to marking, number 1, that overlapping runner, number 2, say, Bolaños or Ruiz coming into that channel as well to provide support.
So I've just doubled down on making sure we don't go back 3. We definitely go 4 at the back. And then 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2, you've got cover on the wings in both. We're saying 4-2-3-1 because we want essentially 5 midfielders. And maybe the way that 2-3 works in the middle, it's at least staggered enough that we have space covered.
Right.
Am I being optimistic in hoping that we do this?
No, I mean, it's a formation we've played before. I think, if anything, he's more likely to play just a flat 4-4-2.
Yeah. And so should we even investigate this 4-2-3-1, given that it may not be possible? Because I don't see him dropping Wood or Altidore, which means it has to be 2 up top. Yeah.
I mean that's the flip side to it. We can talk about that in a second. Let's talk about more so why we think a 4-2-3-1 would work. Then let's talk about why we think a 4-4-2 will happen. I think a 4-2-3-1 is good because it gives you that defensive presence in the midfield in the form of probably Bradley and Jones. Then it gives you another playmaker who can drop deep. That would likely be, as Daryl gestures to his upper lip, Sacha Kljestan. I think we'd both be okay with seeing because he can help defensively, but can find those spaces, find the options, and then basically kind of hold the ball up a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. If we're going to move the ball quickly, if we're going to hold on to possession, Sacha Kljestan is your man. If you're going to serve great balls into the box for set pieces, Sacha Kljestan is your man. My only concern is, I wonder, hasn't really been asked about, I'm not sure if anyone asked about Kljestan in the press conference. I wonder if the broken nose and the face mask has sort of affected his performance in practice, and they've looked at him and been like, he's struggling a bit with this whole broken nose business.
Yeah, that could be, but I think also if you go back to that game, it's that he wanted to play the 3-5-2 or the 3-4-1-2, and he wanted that one to be Pulisic. Yeah. And if it's not Pulisic, I mean, if it's going to be Pulisic, then you have no room for Kljestan.
That's true.
So I think that's why. And then once you have to switch out of that and go into that 4-4-2, again, that's not really going to be Kljestan because you want Bradley and Jones there.
All right, so the 4-2-3-1, Kljestan ahead of Bradley and Jones. Out wide, that means Pulisic on one side. Fabian Johnson on the other side? Maybe we give Timmy Chandler and Matt Beasler another go at fullbacks?
I would like that. I would be okay with that. Again, I'm a fan of the kind of, I think Adam Carolla calls it like the great magnet, when stuff just starts to kind of line up. I've seen 2 different USA-Costa Rica previews.
Magnet. I love it.
Yeah. 2 different USA-Costa Rica previews that have had photos of Graham Zusi in there. It's like Graham Zusi dribbling with a Costa Rica player chasing him, and it makes me wonder if Graham Zusi is going to start just because of that. Just because of, like, do they know something? Is there a reason why we're all of a sudden featuring Graham Zusi?
I'm not against it.
No, I mean, it's a change that we would have been okay with against Mexico, is to bring in the kind of role player who knows his job, who can play out wide.
Bedoya might have done it as well.
Bedoya might have done it. I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe Julian Green gets a look, although I think I'd rather have him get a look as an impact substitute later on in the game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I am with Bobby Wood in that 4-2-3-1, is say you do kind of frustrate, tire out Costa Rica, maybe you get a goal and they're starting to push, or maybe you're looking for a goal. I think then you can bring in Bobby Wood, kind of train him to exploit that space, exploit the gaps in behind. He's fresh. Maybe they're a little bit tired. Then you can use him effectively that way.
All right. The other question I have is Jermaine Jones. We were told going into the Mexico game, Jermaine Jones just back from injury. He might not start and he probably won't go 90 minutes.
Yep.
Instead, he went 90 minutes and did look tired towards the end. I actually enjoyed his performance a lot. I know not everybody did, but he did tire towards the end.
He did.
Do we think he has the legs to sort of fly to Costa Rica and play?
I don't know, but I think he will. I think he will start this game.
Klinsmann can't imagine a world without him, right?
I think so. although it does seem like maybe that's not quite the harmonious relationship we thought it was.
Maybe
right. Jones,
given the arguments on the sidelines.
Yeah, right? Maybe Jones is more okay with criticizing things and calling things out when he sees them than we thought. As I said in that first, like the hot take show, I thought it was Bradley who does that, and it seems like it's more so Jermaine Jones who's the one who's like, hey. This isn't working. I
think their siblings sort of ganging up together to do it. Worth noting as well, in the previous, like the September friendlies and the October friendlies, when Jones was injured, it was Bradley and Kleshton as essentially a 2-man midfield, and it kind of worked.
Yep.
So there's no reason, I don't think, not to go back to that if we go 4-4-2.
Because those friendlies were against not Costa Rica and Costa Rica would be my answer. So I think if Jones isn't fit, what you might see instead is almost a 4-1-3-2, but those 3 in front of him are still responsible for tracking back and clogging the midfield and doing a lot of defensive work.
So what? So no Jones, Bradley is the number 6, he's the 1, and then the attacking 3 could be like Pulisic, Kleshton, Bedoya, Zusi, whoever on the right, and then still Altidore and Wood up top. I kind of like the idea of Altidore and Wood up top against Costa Rica's back 3, because watching Trinidad, they really only had Kenwyn Jones up against the 3, and it allowed one of the 3 to always step out and get involved in midfield. You notice that, like Johnny Acosta would come out, make tackles higher up the field, because he's still got 2 guys to deal with big Kenwyn Jones. Right? You get 2 fast, strong guys up against them, it gives them trouble. So I was reading, Tico Times on their web. The web reminded me that the starting back 3 against Trinidad of Waston, Acosta and Calvo wasn't the first choice back 3. You've got Oscar Duarte and Giancarlo Gonzalez both missing, and now you've got Calvo injured as well. I think Umania had to come in. So you're going to be on sort of, apart from Acosta, none of the first choice back 3 starting against the US.
There we go.
So go get them.
Maybe. And if you're going to go get them, and this is the downside to the 4-2-3-1, is, as I said, it's a more conservative approach. It means Josie Altidore is up top by himself. That has not been his strong suit in years past. So if you do go with that 4-4-2, then you have him partnering Bobby Wood. And I think, and this is a conversation we could have now or later, it's up to you. I don't know
what it is, but I choose now.
I think you are using Christian Pulisic in the best possible position for him within the U.S. national team, which is out wide.
Yes. Okay, yeah, so the big choice is, I think Pulisic is obviously a starter for the US at this point. The choice is what's the best use of him. And I think Klinsmann made the reason for that whole moving around 3-4-3 or whatever he wants to call it was to give Pulisic a free role, because he thought the best thing we can do for Pulisic is to let him do whatever he wants, which is usually not true, especially with someone who's great at following instructions and doing a job. Right? And so, I think I agree with you that putting him on the left, telling him very specific things about Gamboa may be the exact best way to do it, especially if Kendall Waston's out there. Pulisic up against Kendall Waston, the right centre-back. If he can get behind Gamboa, run at Kendall Waston, I can see the US winning 5 penalty kicks.
I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one. I feel like you've gone with me on this in the past, but I might be wrong, especially given the game we saw him have against Mexico, where he did lots more than I think I thought he did.
Yeah.
But I feel like if this U.S. team were coached by, say, Juan Carlos Osorio, I want him starting in kind of the position he started for the U.S. against Mexico. I want him to have that kind of creative freedom in the middle because I think he was the best U.S. player on the ball, even in those first 26 minutes.
Yep.
He was the one who was able to create things, move the ball quickly, pass the ball wide. Yes, he had a heavy touch at one moment, but outside of that, it was pretty consistently good.
Yeah. And scary. Mexico was scared.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think even then...
Hey, Salcedo, if you're listening.
with the weird lunging tackle, face first. But I think that all said, like, yes, he was good, but if he had more direction, if he knew his role a little bit better, if he had specific instructions, then he's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he's not going to get that, which he isn't again with Klinsmann in charge, it's going to be go run, make things happen, have fun, then you need to be out wide because that's where he plays for Dortmund.
You're making me angry just saying it.
It's what he says. He needs to be out wide because that's what he's used to. That's where he plays predominantly for Dortmund. Mm-hmm. That's where I think he can function the best in his best comfort zone, and that's where I think he makes sense.
And also, to circle back, this is what we said, this is where the opportunities are against Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. They force you out wide, but if you can get behind the wing-backs, there is space. There is a pocket of space behind the wing-backs and in front of the centre-backs. Mm-hmm. And then you can have Pulisic running in on a diagonal at an angle towards goal, right? Because once you're behind the wing-back, there's nothing really forcing you wide. Right. So... Pulisic on one side. I would love Fabian Johnson on the other side.
Agreed.
And then you've got two of our smartest players exploiting that space behind the wing-backs.
And I think like even in the close of that Mexico game when Fabian Johnson comes across and makes that game-saving play, like I feel like when he's not, it's a weird like we don't even want you to defend this game. We want you to attack. Then he's like, yeah, I'll defend all the time. It's like, but if you tell him to be a defender, then maybe he switches off a little bit. I like the idea of him doing that kind of bonus defensive work, but that not being his primary responsibility. If he's your right back or your left back or whichever.
It's like him leaving us a tip.
Yeah. So I think I'd rather have the two of them out wide and then... Yeah, I think Chandler deserves another start just because I think he was kind of hung out by that formation and that approach.
And he was also unlucky that Layun is like left wing back.
Yeah.
It just I don't think they necessarily targeted Chandler. Mm-hmm. They may have been looking to target Yedlin if he was starting. That would be my guess,
yep.
But it just happened that their best wing back was on the left side and therefore that side, Chandler's side, was overloaded.
Mm-hmm. And I think you probably stick with Brooks and Gonzalez, not because either one of them had a particularly...
And Beasler at left back?
Yeah. And I guess Brooks had a pretty good game. Let me take that back. I think Gonzalez, again, I think I'm tainted by the first 26 minutes, but I think if for no other reason than because you want consistency, and they've played together now, and to throw in another center back or another weird combination, it just doesn't have that level of chemistry.
I actually think you'll see Johnson at left back.
Yeah, that's probably a decent shout. And then who out wide? Zusi?
Yeah, Zusi, Bedoya. I'd be happy with all these choices. Yep. There's no one I wouldn't be happy with. Lyndon Gooch I would be excited about. Because that's a hard-working guy who's also got pace. And I think he's smart enough to exploit that space. I would love Lyndon Gooch out wide.
I guess we'll find out soon enough, won't we?
We'll find out. Tuesday night, 9 p.m. TV, 9:05 on Be In Sport.
And the obvious change that we haven't talked about, because it is obvious, is the fact that Tim Howard isn't going to be there. He has the strained abductor or adductor. I don't even know these things. He hurt his groin, is what we're going to say. So he's out for, I think, a couple months.
Yeah,
so commiserations.
That's terrible for Colorado fans.
Yeah, commiserations to Colorado fans. I'm guessing they're going to get some money out of that, but probably not the same as winning MLS Cup.
Yeah, it's not. It's no consolation, is it?
No.
So yeah, Guzan to start. We assume, right? We assume Guzan to start. Did fine for the US. Didn't do anything wrong on Rafa Marquez's goal. Unless, and apart from the fact that sort of Josie's let him down twice down, I wonder if there's some element of Guzan in that. Like, is there any chance that Guzan needs to be telling him to attack? Or?
Maybe. But see, and this is where, to bring it full circle back to there are the three schools of thought about this current U.S. team. That is, again, why I'm in the I have some problems with Klinsmann camp. Because, yes, Josie should know to step, Josie should be aggressive, whatever. But to me, if you're making the same mistake, that speaks to a larger, like, hey, this is our setup for corners. We're not going to practice it, though. You guys are pros. You know what you're doing. Like, it still, to me, is people don't quite know their job. People don't know quite where they need to be. Stu Holden in the broadcast, who I really have come to respect him and what he does, so that if he says, hey, it should be like this, I tend to be like, all right, Stu Holden says it. And his big criticism, that there's nobody on the back post, that makes me wonder if maybe there was somebody supposed to be there, but they haven't practiced it enough, so nobody knew to be there, and then nobody knew to step. And so I just think in the end it comes down to coaching and the overall drilling that's happening within that team.
I kind of agree, especially the drilling part, because I feel like Josie obviously had a job to do. He knew the spot he was supposed to be in. But the fact that he failed to meet the ball twice, once against New Zealand, once against Mexico, says to me that he knew the spot, but he didn't know the thing to do in the spot. Right? If they drilled multiple times, Josie, you step and head it out when it comes into this space. I feel like he at least doesn't do it twice in 2 games. He doesn't fail to do it twice in 2 games.
I don't think he would, no.
All right. But we're optimistic for this game, right? We would take... we're hoping the US puts in a respectable performance and gets at least a draw for us to be happy, correct?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if we lose, we get 0 points from the first 2 games. The next Hex qualifier isn't until March. So we'd be sitting at the bottom of that table for like 5 months.
Yep. We would like that not to be the case.
We would like that not to be the case. We will, of course, be back late Tuesday night with our review of this game. We won't have a quick take, hot take, because we'll be running a coaching session during the first half. But we'll review the game that night, and we'll have a review show out, and we will use the correct microphones for that review show, I promise.
What time does the game start again?
9.
Yeah, there's no way. I was going to say, it would be interesting almost...
That just goes till 10.
Well, no, I was going to say, it would be an interesting thought experiment to do, like, the second half, to watch the second half and then do the instant take and then go back and watch the first half and see how much that changes your perspective and how much you can glean from just watching one half of soccer.
Right.
But we're not doing that.
We won't be informed enough, right?
No, we won't have enough time. Because even then, if it's at 9... practice ends at 10. It's still like a half an hour drive to get back here in time. So yeah, we would definitely not make it in time. We could do a quick take, hot take on the final 10 minutes of the game, maybe.
That would be the hottest of things.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a good way. So yeah, look for that. It's going to really be late Tuesday night, so look for it Wednesday morning. Tuesday morning, you can look for my episode of The Goalmouth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Find it in iTunes.
And before that, you can look right now for our new Fuchi video.
Yes. All right. So today's episode is sponsored by the fine people at Fuchi, makers of the engineered soccer rebounder. We filmed ourselves playing round Fuchi a few weeks back.
We did.
With our friends and teammates in Patrick's backyard. Hi, Patrick, if you're listening. Round Fuchi is where you line up youngest to oldest, and you have to play the ball against the rebounder. Next person plays it. If you miss, you're out. It was good fun.
It was. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it even when I tried to cheat and knock you over, and instead you scored on me.
Oh, and that piece of footage made it to the final cut, Taylor. You'll be very pleased to know.
So what happens when you get too crafty? You get too creative in your approach, and then, like Pep Guardiola, you implode.
So if you want to get a look at how much fun Fuchi can be, and really, no one is acting. No one is a paid actor in this video. This is genuinely us sort of having fun playing Fuchi. You want to see Taylor get caught cheating and get his comeuppance? The link will be in the show notes. It's also at youtube.com/Total Soccer Show.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I forget who said that one.
Probably you.
Somebody in NASCAR, I'm pretty sure.
If you would like to buy your own Fuchi, it would make an excellent Christmas gift, I suggest.
Think so.
Then the price has been lowered already to $149.99. With the coupon code TOTALSOCCER! It is down to $129.99. You can go to www.playfuchi.com to get your Fuchi. How do we spell Fuchi? Because apparently I say it weird.
FUTCHI.
There we go, playfuchi.com. Thank you to Fuchi for sponsoring today's episode, and thank you to Patrick for letting us use his backyard.
Yep, and for supplying floodlights. Otherwise, it would have been a very dark Fuchi video. Yeah. And backlit with a bonfire. So it's nice across the board.
Final segment on today's show is the return of the Total Soccer Show Scouting
Network.
Sir. I say return, we did one on Friday as well. Scouting reports keep coming in about promising young players around the world. They are sent to us by scouts, the TSS scouts. These are the people who are supporting us. They've done so at totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. First up today, Taylor. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first. Why not?
Okay. First up is Guy Yedwab. Guy is scouting Serge Gnabry, the 21-year-old German winger, formerly of Arsenal, now with Werder Bremen. Things going well for Serge Gnabry.
Seems that way.
Here's what happened. So not too long back, Guy reported that Gnabry got his first senior German national team call-up for the World Cup qualifier versus San Marino, and it went well. We got a tweet from Guy at 2:56 Eastern on Friday, when Germany were playing San Marino, saying, Scouty Gnabry scores debut goal in first 10 minutes of first team debut. Keep level head, keep level head. We got another tweet at 4:22, which is towards the end of the game, saying, hat-trick on his debut, parentheses, okay versus San Marino, but still, all caps. And then a gif of, I believe, Abby from Broad City dancing.
I mean, that's the way to go. If you're going GIF, you go Broad City.
So there you go. Serge Gnabry is now a hat-trick scorer for the senior German national team.
By the way, if you enjoy the comedy, if you need a laugh, I suggest watching the Broad City introductory segment when she's depositing the check at the bank. It's amazing. You should just watch it. Yeah, it's great. It's great. It always makes me laugh. Up next, we have a report from Carl Getz, scouting Zach Clough, the 21-year-old Bolton striker. Last time we heard from Carl, Zach Clough was finally back from injury and had scored a couple of goals for Bolton. Clough has now scored 3 more and been awarded, the Sky Bet League One Player of the Month, the PFA Fans League One Player of the Month, and the Bolton Wanderers Player of the Month. Lots of silverware to add to his, previously barren but now very full trophy cabinet.
Sure is, yeah. He is back. Bolton in League One, but I believe in 4th place, so they may be back soon.
Could be.
Up next, Ryan Marzak is scouting Pione Sisto, the 21-year-old Danish winger who recently moved to Celta Vigo. We've been enjoying following Sisto, right?
Yeah, we have.
So Sisto had an assist for Celta versus Las Palmas in late October, then had a 96% pass completion rate in a 2-1 win over Valencia.
That'll do.
Again, he's a winger. 96% pass completion rate for a winger. I'm going to say high.
Yeah.
Very, very high.
You're going to say high, you think? You're going to go out on a limb here?
I'm no expert.
It's risky.
I just know that's a big number. Ryan also notes that Pione wasn't called up to the Denmark squad for World Cup qualifying versus Kazakhstan. I believe they won 4-1 anyway. But he was called up to the U21s. They play the Italy under-21s in Euro 21 qualifying today.
This is true.
Denmark must be doing well if they can afford not to call up Sisto.
Yeah. That's a good point. I had not thought about it like that. Final report comes from Marcus McCarthy, who's scouting Kyle Walker-Peters, the 19-year-old Spurs right back. Or is he? Says Marcus, because I'm assuming it's going to be explained here. Marcus sent us what's basically a scouting report on KWP from the Sun newspaper, following Spurs' U23 1-1 draw with Man United's U23s. Hooray for outsourcing.
That's me. I wrote outsourcing. He's essentially outsourcing his scouting duties to the Sun newspaper.
Nicely
a good
done.
way to do it.
Yeah, that works, I guess, if you trust the Sun. He says his favorite quotes from the report: against United, with usual playmaker Marcus Edwards injured, Walker-Peters grabbed the baton and led the orchestra, moving from defence into midfield with ease.
Doesn't sound like the Sun, right? Using that type of musical metaphor.
It does not, yeah.
Turns out it was. I clicked the link. It really was.
It's also not written in all caps, and it's not inflammatory. So, no, it doesn't sound like the Sun. The teenager has all the guile of a number 10, but also the pace of a seriously nippy winger. And finally, as a fullback, he is startlingly similar to his namesake.
Kyle Walker.
I don't think that's his namesake, but sure. And Danny Rose.
2 Kyle Walkers. There are only 2 Kyle Walkers.
I understand that, but isn't your namesake like the person that you are named after? Like, I'm pretty sure that his parents weren't like, yes, this 1-year-old child who will one day be your teammate at Spurs. That's not how that works. And Danny Rose, but he's even more impressive in attacking positions. He looked like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain used to when he threatened to be a world beater.
I feel like the Sun reporter that wrote this is a Spurs fan.
You think?
Because that's in Oxburn.
This feels a little bit like when, it's like I always had this idea of writing a book and then writing a letter to the editor about that book and then using that as like the New York Times says Taylor's book is great. It was a little bit like that here. Like a big Spurs fan did that.
Could we do that with the podcast?
Yeah, I think we should.
We'll write letters to the New York Times.
We should just hold up a sign in the background of like CBS Evening News or something that says the Total Soccer Show is the best show ever.
As featured on CBS.
Yes.
So thank you to Guy, to Carl, to Ryan, and to Marcus, and to everybody else who's out there doing the fine work for the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. If you would like to join, go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. You will support the show. You will help us keep making more shows at all hours of the night, and we will assign you a young player to scout.
These are facts.
Thank you to everyone there. Thank you, Taylor Rockwell, for taking the time to preview Costa Rica with me today.
Right back at you, buddy. I will see you tomorrow evening for some soccer, and then some soccer, and then some talking about soccer.
Hey, I wouldn't have it any other way. Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you after Costa Rica versus USA.